How now, brown cow? What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Fervent 4. Did you know that only 4% of businesses ever cross the annual $1 million revenue mark? I'm Zack Miller, author of Anomaly. And with me today, I have my co-host, Tim Ryan, lead man at startwheel.org. Thank you so much for joining us. The Fervent 4 is a weekly show each and every Thursday at 11 a.m. dedicated to sharing insights into growing a world-class business no matter the climate. The Fervent 4 is powered by the SBDC, which helps local small businesses grow through counseling and resources like this show. If you're interested in learning more on how the SBDC can help your business, head to startwheel.org/weekly. Pitching, performances, presentations galore. Today we have Gary Plaag on performances that don't suck. So, why are you looking at me like I'm so crazy? Like,
it sounded awesome.
But there was something in there, and I think that you were a little worried about.
You mispronounced his first name. His first name is Gary.
It's Gary.
Gary. Okay, Gary.
Yes.
Well, the reason I want to start with that is when you're going to announce someone's name in a performance, you probably should make sure that it's right. And so I wanted to intentionally mispronounce your last name, which is supposed to be what?
Plaag.
And I said Plaag. How dare me, Zack Miller, you terrible person, yo.
Because what is everybody's favorite word?
Their
name is their favorite word.
Is that true?
True, yeah. Because you notice it if somebody mispronounces it, then you go, that person just did that. Yep. Yeah.
So I've also one of my fears is always mispronouncing someone's name.
So when I would have to announce someone's name on like my TV show that I had before, I would just not say their last name. I would just be like, and here we are with Tim. Tim, how are you?
Right.
Because some of them are very different, or are very difficult, right? Mm-hmm. And Michelle King says, or misspells it, which is interesting because that one I feel like is easy to not mess up. Like if you just do a little bit of work, you should be fine. But and on the pronunciation part too, but pronouncing someone's name can be very difficult. I mean, mine is Zack Miller, right? And that's Tum Royan and Gary Plaag. Like this shouldn't be a hard thing. Just ask beforehand.
Right. Absolutely.
So you call a pitch, a presentation, a performance, and it's something that I've adopted myself in my language, Gary, that has been very, very beneficial because I think when you call it a performance, not just a pitch or a presentation, you really realize and recognize how important it is to be on stage and be in performance mode.
Right.
What got you kind of around that?
What's that?
What got you kind of behind the performance and not just like a pitch or just being on stage or something like that, and really recognizing that as a performance?
Yeah, when we do things like if we say I have a presentation, so I'll ask people sometimes, you have your presentation ready, and they'll say, oh yeah, I got it all right here, and they'll point to their laptop, and I have to tell them that that's not the presentation, that the PowerPoint or Keynote or Prezi or whatever slide presentation software you've designed it in is in fact in the laptop or in your computer, but you are the presentation, and those are just tools that help you to be more. They help you stay on track, or they just give you more credibility. They enhance the presentation, and so when we call it a performance, you realize that you're on from the beginning of. From even I say you're in the performance from the minute you walk get out of your car and walk across a parking lot and go into a building, or the minute even in the pre-business, if we're doing it virtually, before you even get on air or before you go live or whatever, then that performance has to have started not just for everybody watching you, but it also has to start in your head. You have to know that you are in performance mode. It's kind of like people in the theater. They don't just if they're in a play or a musical or something, they don't just walk out of the dressing room and go on stage. They have a whole routine that they spend maybe hours, some of them, getting into character, getting the distractions of the day out of the way, depending on who they're playing or whatever, they really, really focus on making sure that they are in the space that they need to be in their heads emotionally, so that they're able to give the best performance possible.
Well, and the audience isn't looking at the playbill the whole time, looking at that, right? So if you really, I've always said that the slides that accompany it are secondary or supplementary information that really shouldn't do anything to distract the actual performance, right? And so can you imagine spending $200 on a ticket for an event in person with a lot of people? I don't know if you can remember what that was like, but at some point in life we did do those type of things, and then just reading the playbill, which is like the schedule of how things are going to go on, or who the actor or actresses are the entire time. That would be a waste of your money. Now, you might look at it every once in a while, but that's not what you're there for. That you don't look at the at a football game, whatever the program is, the entire time. You watch what's on the field. That's the performance, and it's genius. And I've loved that ever since that you.
Because you talked about it probably a couple of years ago, doing that. Yeah, and so that performance idea really helps my clients when I tell them that, and even students I've taught, as I don't talk about the presentation, really say, well, we have a performance coming up here, and when we do that, then they're in a different place. They know that they're going to be seen, and then of course that we have to help people get past the fact that they're going to be seen, and that they are the main attraction, if you will. And so we got to help them get past that anxiety about being seen, because a lot of times some people just don't want to be seen, or they're just not used to having all eyes on them. But when we start talking about these presentations or pitches or whatever being a performance, which is really, as we've talked, it's also not just a vocal performance, it's a visual performance as well. And it's really, it's a full body experience, and they've got to be ready for that. What do they look like when they move their hands, and what do their facial expressions look like? And I often think about in communication studies, we learn that people generally will believe what they see more than they believe what they hear when it's a performance where they can actually see people. So you got to look like what you're saying, or it's not going to have as big an impact as it could.
Well, one of the things that's really, I think, misconstrued is the fact that when we talk to people about their performance or their presentation, they'll be like, oh yeah, I worked on my slides for like 20 hours. And they spend all this time on their PowerPoint slides, and they spend 5 minutes on what the soundtrack is or what the actual performance is going to be.
Right.
So what's your take on that?
hold on real quick. I literally did that with someone this morning, and I was like, start talking it out. They're like, no, I don't want to. And I'm like, okay, like, that's what that's the performance, not the things behind you. Right? People would love to look at The Rock all day, but that's not my slide. This is the slide. Yeah,
exactly. And a stunning specimen it is, right?
The Rock or me?
You, of course. Yeah. So people need to really be thinking about everything that's going to be seen around them. And in these days of video conferencing things, is that you got to know, like, what's behind you. Like, is there, in this case, I have a bookcase behind me, and the books are pretty much in order, and that's fine. And I make sure that any books that anyone can see are okay with me to be seen. But I've had clients who are going to be on national television. They're going to be on an interview, and the bookcase behind them is a disaster. And they have a picture that they don't want people to see, and they didn't even think about it. They've looked past that their whole time, where they have piles of junk laying around. That's all part of the performance too. And what do you want people to see, and what do you want them to hear, and how do you want them to, what kind of impression do you want to leave them with? What do you want them to walk away with thinking about you and the performance? And so I guess going back to what you asked before, Tim, is that people need to start rehearsing. And the thing that I see a lot is that they will prepare the slides, they will prepare the script, They will write all that stuff down, and they will leave themselves very little, if any, time to actually run it, to practice it, to video record it themselves and see what they look like when they're saying these things. And then, is that how I want the audience to see me? They don't do that. And that's unfortunate, but they just will spend lots and lots of time in the prep, but never in the preparation, or the preparation for the performance, but never in actually rehearsing it.
Right. And then they get on stage and it's like this. A quick glimpse into what you're getting into. Standardized tests, participation trophies, clothing sizes at a very young age. Like, and then they read, and then like, by the way, this is a super secret project that I'm working on.
Yeah.
And you're like, standardized tests, participation trophies, clothing sizes. What is this guy talking about?
Exactly. Well, and one other thing that people should realize is that the more that you bring up with you, and it's written out in full text, whether it's, well, first, we don't want full text on the slide anyway, but
oh, good. Death by PowerPoint, right?
Yeah. But if you bring up a script with you and it's something that's readable, then for sure people are going to read it. If you are forced, if you bring that tether up with you, you're going to read it. So I always say, minimize that to bullet points on your notes, just trigger words that you know what you're going to talk about, and then talk about those things. But because if you know your subject matter, you're going to talk about the things in the detail that you need to talk about them. But if you bring up a script with you, you're going to try to read it, because we're just wired to not want to make a mistake. And so we're going to read the script, and then nobody wants to hear you listen to you read to them, if you will.
Yeah, and it's funny. One of the guidelines that I use is guesstimate whatever the average age of your audience is going to be, and use that number or divide it in half, and that should be your font size for your slides if you have slides. And then the pushback you get right away is, well, I can't fit everything on the slide then. And it's like, right. Well, that's exactly the point.
Yeah. And slide creation, there's lots of good videos out on YouTube about that. A rule that I generally use is a 6x6 rule. And that is that there are not more than, if you're going to have text on a slide, it's always better to have pictures that tell the story, or graphs or things like that. But if you're going to have text that's in bullet points, is to not have more than 6 bullet points on a slide, and not more than 6 words on each bullet point. And definitely not in sentence structure, not complete sentences. It should just be snippets of things that are in each of the lines. And that way people can easily look at it while you're talking. They can reference it, and then they can move back to you again, because as Zack and I have been saying, you're the performance. It's all about you, not about the slide that's simply enhancing or confirming things that you're saying. And another thing to think about, even on slides, is that if you can use animations, and I don't mean crazy animations like spinning things and sound effects and all that, but just an appear. If you have a transition that says appear, or an animation that says appear, and you just have it appear, but to only have things appear as you're talking about them, and not put the whole 6 lines up on the slide and then start talking about the first bullet point, because everyone's going to read ahead and wonder what those other things are. So there are clever ways to do that, so that you enhance your performance instead of basically showing your hand, and then the audience is going to get distracted. And how do we keep them from doing that? And how do we keep them with us in the performance? Well, we only show them what we're talking about right now. We don't show them the next 4 points.
I think so many people who perform just don't think about any of the stuff that we're talking about, right? So I tend to now, in any performance that I'm giving, I don't even have words on the slides. The only words that might be there are like literally the handle at Zack Miller Says, or maybe the website through the entire performance. And people are like, that's ridiculous. I'm like, no, like I'm storytelling while I'm up there. I might have an image up there of something that's going to be a part of the story, but I don't need them up there like reading something. And then I got to get them back to me, right? And so if you think about the television, and so many people on their remotes, they're constantly changing the channel. If I'm giving them something else to look at constantly, boom, 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 then like they're not on me.
Right.
And so do you think that a lot of people are not thinking about them as their performance just because it's never been talked about ad nauseum, or is it because they're afraid to be in that situation? And that's why they do death by PowerPoint, which is like just a ton of text on PowerPoints and everything like that. But like, why do you think people are, well, because the number one thing is public speaking that people are afraid of, right? So do you think that they just,
I think there's a couple answers to that.
Yeah.
So one, I think there are people who just don't know, and they don't know because they never really focused on it. And if you focused on it, if you look at why do people not like to go to the doctor? Because if they go to the doctor's probably going to tell them something that they have to do something about themselves. If it's that you're overweight, or you need to exercise more because you have poor circulation, or you're a diabetic, you have to eat differently, or whatever it is. People don't like, I think they're resistant to having to do more than they're comfortable doing. So if you go and start looking at your performance skills, if you start video recording your presentations and performances, and then it's one thing to video record them, it's another thing to actually go back and look at them. And so when you start going back and looking at them, now you're going to see that there are things you could work on to make it even better. And so that's one group of people, I believe, are people that just don't know. And it may be because they're petrified, or they just don't want to spend the time figuring it out. And then there are others that don't know because no one has ever given them the feedback about how they perform. And so if you take somebody in a more hierarchical organization, you take someone that's pretty high in the organization, let's say it's the chief operating officer of a larger firm, and we'll say we'll call her Jane, and Jane does these presentations and performances for internal staff and external staff, and she's interested in how she's doing, and she goes to the people that work under her, for whom she's a supervisor, and she asks them how they thought she did. And are those people really going to give Jane the feedback that she needs to hear? Probably not. They're not going to say, they're going to go, "Oh, Jane, it was great. It was great." And Jane's going to go off thinking it was great. And then other friends in the organization are probably not going to give her the honest feedback that she needs to be able to advance to another level. And that's where Jane needs to go outside of her company and find someone, if they have an internal coaching program perhaps in the organization, but someone that's not in any way reporting to her or anything like that. She needs to go outside and get somebody who will be direct and honest with her to tell her what other people see. And
that's actually, I can't remember what the phrase of that is. People who think that they are better than they really are.
Well, it was a study called the Dunning-Kruger effect.
That's right.
Yeah, and it was where people who it was done at a college, I believe, and they found that people with really weak skills will evaluate themselves and rate themselves much higher than their actual performance level skills would indicate. And then people that are just really outstanding tend to rate themselves a bit lower than their performance skills actually are. And a great example of that is we see it on like American Idol, and where someone who can't sing, and really they cannot sing, they've never been taught, never been trained appropriately, or I think everybody can sing if they spent the time to do it, but it doesn't come natural for this person. But somebody in their life has told them they're great. And they go on the show and the judges tell them that, they try to be kind usually, but then the person gets indignant and says, "But my family's told me I'm great all the time." And then it turns out that no, you're not. And so it's the first time they've been confronted with that. And you work with,
okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, then they become really irate. And we see it on American Idol. You can see it. And they get really, really upset. Yet you get somebody like on Britain's Got Talent and Susan Boyle, and she was the middle-aged woman who wanted to sing opera, and she had a beautiful voice, but she was dressed in kind of a brown dress, and her hair wasn't fixed up, and she wasn't really wearing any makeup, and she was very, very much sort of introverted about her skills, and she looked like that, and the whole audience kind of dismissed her, like, okay, and they asked her what she was going to sing, and she said she was going to sing "I Dreamed a Dream" from Les Mis, and she sings it, and brings the house down, and it's like musical theater star quality. It was just unbelievable. And so she probably thought she would have rated herself lower than her actual abilities. So that's the Dunning-Kruger effect, and we see it a lot.
And you've worked with hundreds, if not thousands, of people. How do you bring the reality to these folks?
You know, we talk about this right at the beginning, and we talk about this thing, and so it gets people thinking about, wow, you know what? I might be told something, at least it's in their heads. I might be told something that is contrary to what I believe about myself. But so we talk about that up front. But the other way that I deal with it with clients in workshops or just even one-on-one is that I create a safe environment for them so that they don't have to worry about being judged, and they're going to get feedback, but they don't have to feel threatened by the feedback. And so we set that up at the very beginning. And one of the things that I'll do with them is I'll ask them to do a performance, and if it's a presentation of some kind, and maybe we just video record 5 minutes of it. And then I ask them, we video record it, and then I ask them to please watch it. And then they're going to watch it, and I watch it with them. And before we actually see it, I say, now, I want you to, here's a piece of paper. You got a pencil, a pen. I want you to write down only the things that you like about the performance. Not interested in this run about the things you don't like. And your brain's going to be filled with things, and it probably already is filled with some things that you didn't like about the performance, things that you thought you made an error on, or you just didn't like it. I'm not interested in any of those. I'm only interested in what you liked about your performance. And so they have a little bit of trouble wrapping their head around that. And then we watch the video, and they are writing down things that they liked. And so we finish watching it, and I say, what did you like about your performance? And they'll tell me the things they've written on the sheet. And they say, I haven't written very many, maybe I got 2 or 3 things, but, because I can think of a lot more things I didn't like. And I would say, I know we're not interested in any of those. We're just interested in what you liked about it. Because here's the crazy thing, is that when people identify what they liked about the performance, and I or others in the class or the workshop confirm that those things were in fact very likable, those people, the next time they do their performance, they are more likely to emphasize and accentuate the things that people said they did well, and that they themselves acknowledge that they did well. They're much more much more likely to repeat those things that they liked, and then we're not even focused on any of the things that were less effective. So then we'll go back and do it again, and I'll say, all right, now let's talk about things that you think would make this performance even better than it was. Instead of saying, let's identify the things you didn't like, and let's identify the things that you thought you did wrong. Let's identify the things that you believe, if you could do it again, would benefit the performance to be even better the next time. So that type of strategy, in at least the people that I've worked with, tends to build trust with me that I'm not going to hurt them, and my goal is not to hurt them. And I tell them right up front, I'm with you the whole time. I'm here with you. I'm not going to let you get hurt. And we can explore this area that you've been frightened of for a long time. We're going to explore it today. And we're going to, and people seem to like it. They really like that we create a safe environment for them so that they can feel free to explore and not be perfect.
I wonder if that strategy would work with anything, right? I mean, because, whether it be athletics, whether it be about just, I guess this would be an education world with what we're talking about now, with family life. I mean, from a counseling perspective, I mean, it's just like put them in that safe zone and they'll talk about it, because I think people ultimately want to improve. It's just whether or not that they, I guess, feel comfortable in that setting with that exact person, especially if that person they just met and they're trying to get that trust in there. I mean, that can be a difficult thing, but I think it's powerful to put the person in that kind of setting to be like, hey, like, I want you to improve too, but we have to get you to tell me what we need to do to improve that, right? And then we can clearly look at this thing. And I remember when I first started in TV, I was a photographer. And even before that, when I was in like college and was a sports anchor, I would rewatch all of my tapes, whether it was from me recording it on video, whether it was me actually on stage or on the set, whatever it might be. And I would watch it, and I would like, it would be tedious because I'd be sitting there like, I should have done this. And it wasn't me being hard on myself. It was just like, okay, you did this before, try not to make this mistake again. Right. And so if I wanted to say your name correctly, I would practice that over and over and over again. Instead of just reading it in my mind, I would actually say it out loud. And that's a huge thing that most people don't do. They also read it and not actually speak it. And then when they speak it the first time, they're like, oh, that's not what I anticipated. And so we really have to make this a formula where people speak and not just read as well.
Yep. Yeah. And you think about even when, let's say that you're talking about something that has, I mean, we know that living here in the peninsula area, we have things that are old Native American names or family names that are spelled differently than they're pronounced, or place names that are uniquely said. They're pronounced a unique way because of the people that live here, and they're not pronounced the way that they look when you're reading them. So to go and give a presentation and do a performance someplace where you're using those names, the name of the people or the place names or names of buildings or whatever, and you're mispronouncing them, well, that leaves a credibility issue in the audience's mind. They're wondering, well, if you're so good at this thing, then why did you not take the time to learn how to pronounce this name of this place where we live? And so, yeah, I'm working right now as an executive partner at the business school at William & Mary. And we have two of us are executive partners for a team of 4. And so I have a student from Nigeria, and his name is different than what it's pronounced differently than I would think it would be pronounced by just reading it. And so when we first met on video last week, it was kind of comical if we had video recorded it, but I was asking him, how do I pronounce that? And he would tell me how to pronounce it. And I must have tried it 10 times. And it turns out that at the very end of that whole thing, he said, yeah, Gary, my name goes, you keep the last vowel, you keep raising your voice on it. And it doesn't do that. It goes down on that vowel. The pitch goes down. I thought, wow. So there's a musical cadence about the language that his name comes from, where I needed to be cognizant of that, not just, and where it's a 3-syllable name, and where which syllable is actually accentuated, or which 2 are, or is one, and the accents on things are different than they are in English. So it was important to him for me to do it. And it took me seriously like 10 times that I kept trying to say it. And he was like, oh, it's close, try it again. And so but when you take the time to do those kinds of things, then I believe people trust you, because you've actually taken an interest in them and learning something that's valuable to them. As I said before, for most people, your most favorite word is your name. And if you, for whether it's how to pronounce it or if you don't ever use it. So Tim, you and I we go back many years. And if I somehow never called you Tim and just kept forgetting what your name was, then you think that's really weird because, I thought we were either business colleagues or I thought we were friends. And Gary's not even saying my name right. So that's strange. Like, why would that happen? And I guess my understanding of the relationship is different. So even with that, we can see how much gets read into this whole communication thing. How effective are you at it?
Yeah, and with that, I mean, as we all know, times have changed quite a bit. There is a ton of negativity that goes on right now, and there's a lot of people complaining because their experience from a customer standpoint has changed. What is what advice do you give business owners that have to have that difficult conversation or neutralize a situation that, hey, we had to change the way our procedures within our business and things aren't the way that they used to be? What advice do you give business owners that are facing these types of challenges?
I would say that one thing you have to do is you have to be really authentic about the message. And trying to hide things, people are smart. They're probably not they know something's up. And acknowledging that this may be difficult for the client to receive, that you're going to be changing the terms of your contract or you're going to be handling things in a different way, that is to acknowledge that I understand that this may be difficult. And I understand that it's coming at you as it may be the first they're hearing of it, which is another whole thing. Like, why would you just pop it on someone? It should be something that's being made aware of that earlier than the day they have to do it. So, but that's part of the whole conversation, that dialogue of being authentic, being transparent about what it is, about why you're doing it. You don't have to tell them all the reasons you're doing it. You have to go in the gory details, but you do have to give them enough that they understand. And then you could also say, so help me understand any concerns you have about this. And then they'll tell you that this is what I'm concerned about. And to be able to say to them, wow, I can see your point. I can see how this is a surprise for you. And I regret that it's upsetting for you. It wasn't the intent, but we also realize that intent sometimes doesn't match impact. So really, to answer your question, is to be transparent, to be as authentic as you can without you have to give enough information, but you may not need to go into all the gory details, and to maybe work on that relationship with that client so that you're used to having difficult conversations with them, and understanding and recognizing that this will be hard for them. This could be a significant change for them. Could have a financial impact on them. It could have just, they like to do things a certain way. They've done it a certain way for a long time. And now you're changing that. And so understanding that change for many people is difficult. And so how you do that, how you navigate through that is a whole art as well. And so I'm not sure if I've answered your question, Tim, but that's how I would handle things. Is news that's difficult is having to tell somebody just what I've said, is to be authentic about, don't try to hide.
And I think that, right, exactly, that those difficult conversations are really tough for people to have. And you have to, bad news or difficult conversations are not going to go away with time, or they're not going to get better with time.
But they're much easier if you've spent the time building a relationship. So, you and I have a lot of time, we spent years getting to know each other, giving each other feedback and sharing things with each other. And so it would not be difficult for us to have a hard conversation, but it's when people they haven't put the work in up front to develop the relationship to the point where they can have the difficult conversation, then it's hard. Then it's really hard.
When I watch content, when I watch media, when I watch any kind of video, or I read an article or I read a book, I'm constantly reading it for the information that's in it. But then as a marketing guy, I look at it to say, I wonder how that thing hooked me. And I wonder if there's a way for me to copy or use a piece of that in my own world, so that I could use that with my customers or prospects and things like that. Do you use the same effect of me from a marketing perspective, but from a performance perspective on people that you watch to pick up tips or little things from movies, being on stage, etc.?
Yeah. So I always enjoy as an audience member when and I always tell clients this, and even students I've had, that hello, my name is, and I'm going to tell you about this today, is not an effective attention getter. And if you really want people to be hooked into what it is that you're going to talk about, then you need to create, I'll say, a visceral experience for them so that they can feel it inside them and they want to listen to you. They want to hear the rest of the story, whatever it is. So ways that you can do that are great attention getting tools are things like stories, or a quote, a compelling quote of some kind. That, like, I've used one in the past, and I was supposed to be talking about with a group of people about how I had helped an organization that was a chapter of a local organization. I'd helped them. They kind of lost their mojo. They'd gone from 30 people down to about 6, and they were really trying to rebuild their organization, and they felt really defeated. And so I was explaining to another group of people how I had helped them to turn their situation around and rebuild their membership back up to it by that time that I was talking about it, from 6 back to about 25. And so I started that presentation by saying, I didn't get up and say, my name is Gary, and I'm going to tell you about this. They told me that it was my turn to go. And I got up and I said, Beverly Sills once said, there are no shortcuts to any place worth going. And then I asked if anybody knew who Beverly Sills was, and that most people did not. And I explained that she was an American opera singer, and that she had one of her big tasks that she wanted to complete was to bring opera to outside of the opera house and to be able to be viewed by people who didn't necessarily have $200 for a ticket to go to a performance at an opera house. And that there was no easy way to do that, and that there was no shortcut to making that happen, but that she persevered and made that happen over the course of many years, and brought that so that people were now, who didn't necessarily have the money to go to an opera house, they could see what opera was, and many of them may like it. So then I was able to transition that into how this chapter of this organization had rebuilt its membership from its 30 down to 6 back up to 25. And that it took about a couple of years. It was not a fast shortcut. If you're going to have quality members, it takes time. And so that analogy for them at the beginning of the presentation seemed to really help them to, the attention getters do things like they help you get in the space for what is going to be talked about. When you might have had an argument with someone before you got to the meeting, you might have had a traffic altercation, you who knows what happened. But those intros, the stories or the quotes, or perhaps an actual or rhetorical question, a startling statistic of some kind, those things get people into what you're going to be talking about now, and away from distractions that befell them before they even got into your session. So that's why they're a good idea.
And I think you actually have to hook them way more times than people probably give themselves credit to, right? So if we're changing the channel every 6 seconds, we have to be hooking them every 6 seconds. And so if you started a performance with, hello, my name is Zack Miller. Actually, let me do it in a really boring voice. Hello, My name is Zack Miller, and today I'm going to show you how to laugh. You're going to sit there and be like, this guy is a donkey. He's boring. I don't want to watch this. And you're already done with the performance of the day.
We're not going to laugh with you. We're going to laugh at you.
Oh man.
And
you're going to laugh at me?
Yeah.
That's so mean.
Or we'll do what we say in the South and we'll just say, bless his heart, right?
Oh, bless his heart.
But one of the most really almost life-changing things that I experienced was, Gary, and you were there. We happened to go to a meetup, and during that meetup, it was an open mic night for aspiring comedians
at the brewery. Yeah,
and the amount, and that is such a huge parallel to how comedians perfect their performance and what business people need to do to perfect their performance. But these comedians, there are a couple of things that stood out to me. Was one, the amount of support that the other comedians showed to whoever was on stage. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing was the fact that these comedians they were going through this academy, but they had their notebooks in hand and they were recording themselves, and they would have to go back, and they're just constantly tweaking that message because the timing is so important. Or if I tweak this word, then this would generate a laugh, or this didn't work, so I need to tweak it to try to generate that laugh. It was such an eye-opening experience for me. And just for those people that are in business, I check something like that out because it was just life-changing. And that's the same type of importance that you have to put on how you communicate as a business person.
Right. Right. And, a friend of ours, I think Adam Duncan, and and he spoke at my class a number of times at the business school here. And one thing he always talked about, his message was about how the similarities between the comedy club preparation and a business meeting preparation. And one of the things he always talked about was that, you want to be sure you don't have any distractions that are going on when you are on stage. And that when you look at those comedy clubs, they're very sparse. The lights are all shining on the performer. There are no distractions. He used an example of a bar with televisions everywhere around the bar, and so many colors and so many distractions, and something happening everywhere in the room, that a comedy spot in that setting would not work. Where you go to the comedy club and everyone's focused on that one person and there's no distractions. So that's a thing that's why those comedians are looking at all their stuff and looking at their videos, and they're looking at not just how their material landed, they're also looking at, was there anything that I did that was a distraction? Is there anything that I did physically that distracted from the punchline? Was the timing, was it too long? Was it too short? And so I agree with you. Going to watch, understanding the pedagogy of what's happening at the comedy club and then watching it is invaluable experience.
And they have no slides.
What's that?
They have no slides.
They have no slides. And the other thing is, which Adam used to talk about, is that he and his buddy were bored out of their minds in some job they had at the beginning, and they would go down to Newport News to a comedy club and open mic night, and they would just get up and do their thing. And he said, oh my gosh, we bombed so many times, and we learned so much from bombing. But I think a lot of people in this, when they're doing presentations on performances, and this goes back to something that you may have said earlier, Zack, is that, in addressing that, is that people, I think they try to be perfectionists about doing performances and presentations because they can't imagine what could happen if they weren't perfect. And I'm not a psychologist or a therapist, but I imagine that all of us are damaged from something that happened in our childhood. And when that feeling comes back because we didn't do as well as we wanted, then that trauma comes back. And so I think people are afraid of having that happen, where with Adam's advice was to go down to the comedy club and just get up there and fail a bunch of times. And I know Tim talks about this in entrepreneur studies, and that is fail and fail fast, fail often and fast. And you will have a much better product at the end rather than trying to make it perfect and refusing to try new things. I think it's Brene Brown who says, she's a shame and vulnerability researcher, and she says that the foundation of creativity and innovation is vulnerability. If you're not going to be vulnerable, it's going to be really hard to be creative and innovative, because when you're creative and innovative, you're going to fail. And if you're afraid of failing and not willing to be vulnerable, then you're in for a rough ride.
There's so much material out there that people can pick up on. It's just whether or not they're willing to act on the craft, if you will, right? I mean, just steal what a comedian is doing. Just literally take what we just talked about in the last 10 minutes and use that and realize how much notes people are taking for that 1 3-minute performance. I mean, it's incredible to look at why some people are so successful at the top of their game and the amount of time that they put into stuff like that. I mean, think about the Peyton Manning effect, where if you really think about it, Peyton Manning, one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history, people talk about him, sitting there watching game tape on the other 8 months out of the year when he's not playing, 18 hours a day, just constantly looking for these a tick on someone where someone might be moving just a little bit like that. They're looking just for little things, and that little thing could be that I don't like to use the word thing, but that little thing could be that opportunity that you were looking for to make it to that next step, to make it to the Super Bowl, to become the GOAT, whatever. And so, when you were just saying something about something that happened in people's past, I thought about when I was in like 6th grade. I don't know if you guys have ever heard this story, but my first name is Richard. Yes, it's ridiculous that my parents would name me Richard, knowing what the nickname for Richard could be. I don't think they realized that was going to be the case, but it is. And so in 6th grade, there was a substitute teacher that comes in. He's doing roll call. Is John Doe there? Is Tim Ryan there? Richard Miller, Dick Miller there? And for some reason, that set me off, and I hated hearing my name in that situation for like ever. Like, so then the first day of school, every year, literally, even now, like, and they go through roll call and they say Richard Miller, and I would hate that I would have to say, no, actually, I go by an abbreviated middle name, Zack. And they're like, oh, okay. And so to them, they're just like, okay, Zack, don't call him Richard. But it affects me. And it like still to this day, like when I have to like go around a room of like a networking event and like they do the round robin, I hate having to wait to be that person. And I think it's because of that time. And I mean, look, I've talked in front of hundreds of people, right? I've done thousands of broadcasts and performances over my life. But for some reason, that silly little thing where that one guy called me a name that apparently made fun of me, like affected me still like 25 years later. And that's absurd to me to think that something like that could affect someone who basically speaks for a living. But yeah, here we are, and it did.
There's a great book that I'm just starting. I think I'm in chapter 3, but a friend over in
great
England,
book, 2 chapters in. Right?
Well, I know it's a great book because a friend of mine read it and said it was a great book too. But a friend of mine in England recommended it a couple of years ago. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's by van der Kolk, K-O-L-K, I think is the guy's name, and Bessel van der Kolk. And it's apparently a mainstay of therapists and other people that the traumas, whatever level of those they are, there are some that are extremely horrible. And then there are other ones that are probably less significant, but similarly damaging as yours, that your body remembers that, your brain remembers that stuff. And that's why that stuff, it hurts when it happens again and again and again. So it's a resource that people might find interesting, is The Body Keeps the Score. Interesting book.
Yeah, I mean, every time we have conversations, Gary, we continue to unravel more and more stuff. And the whole thing is just super fascinating to me about just everything that embodies business and communication has such a huge part. And we've shared this before, but the whole Shark Tank thing is really it's been a great asset in the sense that it's brought a lot of attention to entrepreneurship and building businesses and going after your dreams. But at the same time, it's hurt in the sense that they make it look, these people that pitch their businesses, they make it look so easy. And they, behind the scenes, they have practiced just like these comedians have, for months and months and months. And then people then think they don't have to practice, that they're just going to go up there and wing it. This is the first time that I'm going to pitch to these sharks. I'm going to walk away with this $1 million deal and ride off into the sunset. But couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, and something that it's good to remember, for which I like to tell people, and that is that your mind can convince you that you are a train wreck or you're a rock star or anything in between. And you may not be a train wreck or a rock star. You may be somewhere in the middle, but left to your own devices, if you're not skilled at assessing what you see and what you hear, and then I suggest that you find someone to help you with that. And that's someone, find someone that you trust, find someone that does that, find a coach, if you will, that can really guide you, and make sure that the coach that you choose is someone that has your best interest in mind and at heart, and that person has experience in this space. And I'd say significant experience in this space, not 6 months or a year, but really, really dedicated and not just academic experience, but also in the trenches experience of actually doing these things. And because I know that if I didn't get a trainer, if I went to the gym and I didn't really know how to set a training session up for myself, then I would read things online and I would be doing all kinds of things that may be not good for me, where it's valuable for me. And I've had trainers in the past, so I probably don't need one now, because I know enough over the past 4 or 5 years of having trainers help me that I know the types of activities I can do at the gym and what things I need to do to help me to develop what I want. But even when I had coaches and trainers like that, I made sure that I got along with them well, that I could trust what they were telling me, because I know that I can't always look at my form when I'm at the gym. I could video myself, but maybe I want to buy a training session and have a trainer just watch me and give me some pointers. You're doing this activity and it's not giving you the maximum impact that you want.
They find it like that too, by the way.
They see it and they go, the form is wrong. So I believe the same thing in this communication performance space is where, and if you were getting an acting coach, you do the same thing. Why am I not getting gigs on these when I'm going to cast calls and stuff? Why am I not getting callbacks? Well, it's because you're doing this. But you need a coach to tell you that. And I think
sometimes people aren't even willing to actually ask the person who the decision maker in that,
right,
hey, what happened, right? So if you applied to something and you got to know, my next question would be like, don't be like all like crybaby about it. Like figure out why, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, figure out why. And so you said something there that I think is really that really hit home, and I say it all the time, and it actually ticks me off, but like, you don't go to your accountant and ask them a dentist question about your teeth, right? But so many people will hire the wrong person to do something for you. Right. And so it's like, if you want to get better at this, I'm not saying you have to go get the Bill Belichick of football coaches, but you want to make sure that person has a track record of the thing that you're trying to do, right? So I'm not going to hire a swim coach to help me with running, right? I mean, maybe that swim coach could be a runner, but you just don't do that, right? And so I'm not going to hire a swim coach to help me with my on-stage performances on talking. That's a better example, right? And so so many people will just hire someone because that person did a good job of marketing themselves, but they suck. And so it's and then they wonder why things haven't improved. It's like you hired the wrong person. It's so clear, right?
Right.
In a heartbeat.
And the other thing that's concerning about this whole situation that we've been living in for the last 6 months is that it is so important to have a conversation like we're having right now. I mean, I feel great after a conversation like this, and so many people are stuck in isolation. and they don't have someone to bounce ideas off of, someone to push them. Yeah, we talk about the dark times of entrepreneurship and that you need someone there to pick you up when you're feeling down. And there's just so many people in business right now that are just trying to do the best they can, but they don't have anybody to reach out to lift them up. That's the most concerning part that I have.
Yeah, they're living in an echo chamber.
Yeah.
And the insecurities they have, all those become bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think we all suffer from that, and that's why it's important to take some armor off and go and run ideas by people and ask for help. I mean, the four most irresistible words that somebody can say to another person is, I need your help. And a lot of people just won't say, I need your help. And it's irresistible because at least for me, when somebody says, I need your help, it's really hard for me to not help them. And so having the courage to go and say to people, I need your help. I need some help. But those four words, really, really powerful.
I love that. Rebecca, who you guys know from Start Peninsula 7, 6, third place winner, says guest speaker equals entertainer.
Absolutely right.
I dig that. Absolutely
right.
What do you think about performances during COVID, performances during Zoom calls and things like this? It's basically the same thing, right? I mean, it just so happens that we're talking on stage here. Like, you still got to get people in. An interesting stat that I had heard from someone who does event planning, Deanie Dormer, who you guys both might know, she said that, when these things first started, when COVID started happening, a lot of people were doing Zoom calls and people were just moving the in-person conference that you would go to for 3 days and just moving that directly online. And very quickly, people were realizing that an 8-hour a day on an online conference does not equal the same as being at that place. And so she said that she's found that 3 hours is like the max that people will sit there. And if you really think about it, it's interesting. It's probably because people aren't performing the same way that you would watch a 3-hour Netflix binge or the Titanic or something like that. You're just not pulling that person in enough and hooking them, right, which is something that we've talked about many times today is incredibly valuable. But what are your thoughts on online performances during this time? Because I don't think we're going to lose a lot of the, when we go back to the new normal that it is, but whatever we want to call any of this, we're still going to be doing things online. Technology is going to get stronger. What are your thoughts on kind of performances in the digital world?
Yeah. So what you said, absolutely right. And when at William & Mary, when things went online at about mid-March, then it was really, really hard to sit through a 3-hour to an hour and 50-minute Flex MBA class on Monday nights where we had all known each other in person and then we were online suddenly and synchronous. And so we had to shorten things. Sometimes we were able to shorten them a lot. But one thing that people can use, which is very, very interesting, is, and the thing that's missing in the online space that you can sort of get that we used to have in-person workshops is that time when people take a break and they chat with each other, or there's the lunch break and everybody talks to each other. And then there's that mid-afternoon break and everybody talks to each other, and conversations happen in that live workshop that sometimes aren't happening in the Zoom or video conferencing space. So I suggest making those opportunities available. So maybe you take more breaks. Maybe you take a break and you maybe have a couple of breakout rooms and they're on different themes. And you send people, you say, identify what breakout room you'd like to go to, and I'll move you to that room. And everybody goes and gets to know each other for 10 or 15 minutes during the break. And then you have lunch and you say, everybody have your lunch ready. We're going to take lunch from 12 to 12:45, and we're going to leave the room open. And everybody, if you want to come hang out and just visit and eat your lunch together, great. Because those are the things that happen. The content can be delivered in a very similar way. But it's those interpersonal interactions that are what we're missing in this video education style.
Well, I guess we're getting, I mean, so like we can have a 3-way talk here, right? But then, and I guess there are some platforms that are trying to have these smaller rooms a part of stuff, right? But it still needs to be micro people, like micro amounts of people, because you can't have, 100-person conference and then say, hey, we're going to have 4 rooms and then still 25 people there.
Right.
You still got to get it down. And, I'm a big proponent of the Just Say Hey movement. And so getting it, even if that person, the event organizer, doesn't have a room available, look at the people that are there. And I would start DMing the person, sliding into the DMs, as the cool kids say, and just be like, hey, like, we're going to take this, I'm going to be on this break. Do you want to hop on a Zoom call ourselves? Do you want to, what's your FaceTime call? Yeah. Like, let's figure out a way to do that. And so oftentimes being proactive in that, I think, can be very beneficial too, not just waiting for the event organizer to have that, because I think that's going to take a long time for a lot of people to do, because they're going to find a billion excuses as to why not to do it. But most of the time you have an event list of people that are there. And I think you should do the due diligence to find those people and chat with them up yourself so that you can do the things that you're saying.
Yeah. And I think a surprise to people who are not used to living in, the one I'm most familiar with is Zoom or Microsoft. What is theirs? Teams. Yeah. And even in this one that you're using, it has a chat window. Sure. And I think that sometimes people that are not used to living in this space are surprised by how active the chat window is, especially by people who are in the younger generation. The under 40s are really into sharing and expressing and communicating in technology.
Are you saying us folks under 40 don't like to do in-person things?
No. I'm saying you're more adept at working in the chat stuff, where older people, I see they're afraid they're going to mess something up. And so they don't.
Well, they're so singularly focused on something too, where I think others have been able to evolve and be able to do 2, 3, 4 things at once, and go and search for certain links during all that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which makes the whole online thing so much more difficult, because there's so many distractions, and you can, just like the viewers of this show. Yeah, it's the number that the viewers is bouncing up and down. You can enter, you can leave, you can, no one's going to notice. So you got to up your game to try to keep that attention.
What will Zack Miller's hair look like this week?
All right.
Right.
Maybe I should dye it next week. Who knows? Dye it purple or something. Is that what you guys want to see? Who knows?
I would like to.
Whatever. Yeah.
Gary, what's something we haven't talked about that you like to talk about, or that you think that we have missed?
I think we've covered a lot of things. We could be on this for 3 days.
Well, as the self-proclaimed greatest interviewer in the world, and then my co-host Tim and I, we have all the questions beforehand that we know we want to ask. We knew that was going to be your answer.
Right.
Great.
How do people get in touch with you, Gary?
Yeah, they can go to my website, which is Couragio, Couragio.com. There you go. Wow, instantly pops up. It's beautiful. And if you go there, there's a contact form. And if you want to, one thing that I do offer people is I want to make sure that I'm the right coach for them. And so there's always the initial assessment of whether I can help you from my perspective and whether you want to be helped by me from your perspective. That's about 20 minutes or so, and it's free, and I'll schedule them on this type of a platform, and we can do it that way, and then we can decide after that session if you want to move forward. And that way there's a no risk at seeing if I can't help you, if you have things that you believe that if you want to talk to me about it and you tell me what your issues are and I'm not the right person, I will tell you.
Finding the right coach is incredibly valuable. I think people underestimate that completely. Like when I'm meeting someone new, I'm like, if I don't like you, I don't want to work with you.
Exactly.
Like that's so, like, how are you expecting me to give you my A game if I don't like you?
Right.
If people are like, that's ridiculous, I'm like, why?
Right. And the other thing is, why would you leave pitching to investors, presenting in front of potential clients, getting new business? Why would you leave that up to chance?
Well, yeah.
Go talk to somebody. You might learn something.
And the thing that which we know from even from Stark Peninsula things is that we remember all the people and almost all of their pitches, and we remember the ones that were rock stars, and we remember the ones that didn't show real well, and
not the ones in between.
Well, we do, some of them we do, but we're watching all that, and we talk about it, and it might have happened 4 years ago, and we're still talking about it. So I think that whatever people, my point in saying that is that when people see you perform and hear you perform, they're going to make their minds up about you, and they're going to remember what they saw and what they heard. Right. And it's like, good or bad, they're going to remember. So why would you want to even risk the chance of them having a less than favorable review of your performance?
Well, and if you remember at Rebecca's Start Peninsula as well, where she got third place, the winner was Eric McManus of Instant Teams, formerly something different that we're not going to state because I can't remember what it was. But to me, as a judge that year, her performance was above and beyond everyone else's like that. And so like we got into the judges room and it was an immediate, she's first place. Let's move on to second and third place. Yeah. And so like sometimes that just happens, right? And honestly, it was probably one of the best pitches or performances ever at Start Peninsula, right? Rehearsal, knew what she wanted to do over and over and over again to get these other people who show up and they're like, hey, I have an idea. It's going to be like $1 billion thing. And there's nothing into it. And you're like,
And you know what about her performance that made it also really, really great, as I recall it? Simon Sinek and Start With Why. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, when they're telling you what they do, they'll start with what and how, and they never get to the why. But in really, really stunning performances or really effective and powerful performances, the why, Erica's why, was evident. It was.
Do you remember what it was?
The why was her passion for
serving,
for getting spouses of military people employed because they were a wasted resource.
Well, and that passion then other people see and then want to get behind themselves.
The why, and that's the why. Is she was doing it, and you could feel her passion because she knew her why, and she was willing to share it.
Well, you don't get behind a moper, right? I want to do it. Like, no one wants to get behind me. Maybe people do, but like,
she was all in though. She was committed to her thing, and that's why.
I'm still to this day very successful. There's been moves around, have raised
a ton of money.
Yeah, I mean, like you can tell that she eats, sleeps, sweats, breathes, whatever the term is, Instant Teams, and good on them for doing that, and good on them for seeing an opportunity. I remember one of the strategies, I actually wrote about this in Anomaly, was that they used events that forked out money as an avenue to start the business or to grow the business. And then when they got with $10,000 at the time at Start Peninsula, they capitalized on that. And so many people don't do that or don't put in the necessary steps to do that. I mean, it's a no-brainer to me. If you qualify, apply. And so, she did, and she went after it, and they won. So good for them.
Yeah.
If you guys are interested in learning more, getting that assessment from Gary, go to Couragio.com, just like right there on the screen. Gary, it's been wonderful. Always great to see you. Are you one of the guys on that beam behind the picture?
I am not.
Okay. But would you do that today?
Would I do that today? Probably not. That's one of those no Scotties. No.
No.
Not happening. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it. I love doing these. And I just, again, thanks Tim and Zack for the opportunity to participate and share some thoughts and all that. So, I loved it.
It's always a pleasure. Good to see you. And at some point in the future, when the world goes back to letting people see each other, maybe we'll see you at an event. Until next time, we can just do this virtual thing and it'll work just fine. Gary, appreciate it. Tim, always good to see you. See you guys next Thursday. Peace and pancakes, y'all.